صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فتور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسعا وهو حسير. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير. وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير. فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير. إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير. وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور. ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبه فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلاة
محمد وآل محمد صلوات سلام مجري خلق میں इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा। मुजरई खल्क में मैंने देखा लमे शाह को आलूदे खून। मैंने अब्बास को भेजा लबे दरिया देखा। मुजरई खल्क में मैंने देखा असगर का गला खून में तर। मैंने जख्मी अली अकबर का कलेजा देखा। मुजरई खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा। मुजरई खल्क में एक घटरी शाहिदीन पुश्त पे लाए जिसमें मैंने टुकड़े हुए कासिम का जनाजा देखा। मुजरई खल्क में कहती थी ज़ैनब मुज़्तर के खुदा खैर करे। रात को ख्वाब में उरियान सर ज़हरा देखा। मुजरई खल्क में जाके ज़ैनब ने मदीने में कहा सुग़रा से कहूँ किस मुँह से के परदेस में क्या क्या देखा। मुजरई खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा। मुजरई खल्क में। सूरत मुबारकत अल फातिहा।
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can we please start Surah Fatiha for the names displayed on the screens and for all marhumeen, please? Surah al-Mubarakat al-Fatiha. Dua Shafa is requested for Shirin Hussain and for all Marid, please. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Membership is now due for renewal. Please renew at either desk. There will be Gents Majlis at Janatul Firdaus, Rowan Road on Thursday, Arbaeen Day at 11:30 a.m. All mu'mineen are requested to attend, inshallah. Tomorrow's program will begin with Maghribin Namaz at 7:53 p.m., followed by Quran, Marsiya, Majlis at 8:40 p.m., ending with Matam, tea and Tabarruk. Lastly, brothers, before we begin, can I please ask you to stand up and come as close to the front as possible? At the same time, let's welcome Sayyid Saleh Qazwini with Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers, please come as close to the front as possible. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى وربطنا على قلوبهم إذ قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها لقد قلنا إذا شططا. For the love of Imam al-Hussain and his holy household, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the most captivating and interesting stories in the Quran is the story of Ashabul Kahf, the dwellers of the cave. Now, interestingly, the Quran refers to them as fitya. The Quran refers to them as youth. While in a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says they were not youth. They were old men. But the Quran referred to them as إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. Allah refers to them as a group of youth. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says they were referred to as youth even though they were old, was because they had the spirit of the youth. They had the heart of the youth, where they were ready to go against the establishment of the time. They were protesting and they wanted to reform society. They wanted to bring change to society. And indeed, this is what we see in many societies, in many communities. You see that those who spark change and those who lead and are in the movement of change, they are the majority of the youth. Now, when we talk about the youth, we're going to say anyone 100 and younger, so everyone feels that this is applying to them as well. Because the people of the cave, they were old, but they had the spirit of the youth. And this is what's important, having the spirit of the youth. Today we see some of the greatest movements now in the tech companies, the Twitter, the Facebook, all of these social media. They were started in startups that were started by youth, started by young individuals. Whether you see it's revolutions and movements, they are run by youth. And you see the prophets of Allah, they surrounded themselves with individuals who were young. This is how they were able to motivate, and this is how they were able to bring change in society. And we also see that Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, his movement, and many of those who were with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, they were young. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, the commander of the army of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, and the eldest of the other brothers of Imam al-Hussain, he was in his 30s, 33 or 34 years old. The three other brothers, they were all younger than Abbas. Ali al-Akbar was younger, Al-Qasim was younger. All of these individuals that were a part of the movement of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, they were all youth. And today we see that it is the youth that will bring the change. And when Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, rises, one hadith says, when he rises, he will rise as a youth. And this is why many people will object to him, because they see a young, handsome looking man, and some people are going to object. They're going to say, we expect you to be older. But Imam al-Mahdi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept him with that youth. Now we see there are ahadith, there are narrations that talk about different segments in society. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the youth, or when the Quran, or when the Prophet, or when the Imams of the Ahl Bayt talk about the younger generation, the youth, they are described as the most beloved of the creation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he says, إِنَّ أَحَبَّ الْخَلَائِقِ إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. From the best of all of the creation to God, and the most beloved to God, is شَابٌ حَدَثُ السِّنِّ, a young man or woman who they are young and they're healthy and they are fit, but they devote their whole life fi sabilillah. They devote their time and their energy and their life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. جَعَلَ شَبَابَهُ وَجَمَالَهُ لِلَّهِ وَفِي طَاعَتِهِ. They use their youth and their beauty and everything that they have, they use it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Rasulullah says, ذَلِكَ الَّذِي يُبَاهِ بِهِ الرَّحْمَنِ مَلَائِكَتَهُ. It is that individual that Allah says the angels, look at him. This is my abd. This is the one that I am proud of. And we see that the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they gave a special attention to the youth, to the younger generation and community and in the society. A man by the name of Abu Ja'far al-Ahwal, he was the helper of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He used to go and preach on behalf of Imam Sadiq. Imam Sadiq would send him and he would tell him, go and deliver our message, the message of Islam, the message of the Ahlul Bayt, the Quran. Go and deliver it to people. So one day Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he sees this man Abu Ja'far al-Ahwal, and he tells him, how is the reaction of the people to our message? When you are preaching, when you're inviting people to Islam, when you're inviting people to the Ahlul Bayt, how is the reaction of the people? So the man, he says, Wallah innahum laqaleel. He says they're very few. The people, they're not accepting. And this is normal. We see until now. The majalis and the sessions where God is remembered, you find a handful, a small group of mu'mineen are attending. But if you go and you tell them, for example, there's a football game, or there's a movie that's out, there's something with entertainment, you see everyone will run towards that. This is natural. The Imam alayhi salam, he tells the man, عليك بالأحداث فإنهم أسرع إلى كل خير. He told him, devote your attention and your time and dedicate your efforts towards the youth, because they are the quickest to anything that is good. They are the quickest to accept the message, and they will be the future that you are going to be investing in. Now, of course, while we see that the youth, they are the quickest to grasp the message and they're the quickest to bring the change and lead movements of change, positive movements, we also see that the youth face challenges. They are also susceptible to harm. They are also susceptible to an identity crisis. Today you find many of those people who reject God and do not believe in God, they're also from the youth. You find that there's a growing movement of atheists, growing movement of individuals that do not believe in God, and you find that ideology is solidified at the age of the youth. And in fact, there are studies that have been done on the millennials and Gen Z, Generation Z. It shows that there's a very small number, especially in Western countries, in Canada, in the United States, in Britain, you see that there's a small percentage of them who actually believe in God. According to YouGov, in late November, they found that only 23% of Britons aged 16 to 24 believe in God. Only 23%. And 19%, even less, of those who are aged 25 to 39 believe in God. So this is a catastrophe. This is a calamity where you have this small number of people believing in God. This is why, my dear brothers and sisters, we need to pay particular attention to the youth, to the younger generation, because it is the age of the youth that many of them are having an identity crisis. Many of them are dealing with cultural issues. At home, there's one culture that is practiced. In the masjid, there's one culture that is practiced. But at school, at the universities, going outside the house, there's a totally different ideology that is pushed on them. And you find many of them, they start dealing with stress. They start dealing with anxiety. They have an identity crisis. And our kids are also susceptible to that. Our youth are susceptible to that. In fact, today, there's many youth that are dealing with depression. There are many youth that are dealing with anxiety. I don't know the numbers here, but in the US, the numbers are very high. Just myself, in the city that I'm in the location that I'm in the last year, since January until a few weeks ago, I had to lead the janazah prayer over 3 youth below the age 30 that died below the age 30. That is just me. This is not talking about other scholars, other community leaders. And in many cases, in many cases, this goes back to depression. This goes back to using of drugs, using intoxicants. It goes back to giving up on life. And this is a catastrophe. This is a calamity. And I would probably assume that the numbers are very close in this society as well. So this is why we have to give special attention to the youth. We have to deal with their problems. There are many problems that we don't even consider. Right now, for example, there's something that is achievement culture, where everyone, they want their kid to be the top of the class. Everyone, they want their kid to be successful. Everyone, you have to be a doctor or this or that. And this creates stress. This creates anxiety for many of the children. So these are things that must be dealt with. There are fake icons in social media right now. Right now, there are people that look like they're good role models, but in fact, they're not good role models. And it is a lot of the youth, they could easily get fooled by these individuals. So now, my dear brothers and sisters, this is a question that we all have to ask as community members. And that is, how can we save our youth? How can we protect our youth? How can we dedicate more of our efforts towards our youth? And this is a question that should be asked by the elders. This is a question that is asked by parents. Inshallah, either all of you are parents or all of you are going to become parents. And this is a question that many parents have in mind. And that is, yes, maybe I could guarantee my kids their food and their drink and their housing and their shelter. This is easy. But can I guarantee their guidance? Can I guarantee their hidayah? Can I guarantee that they will grow up having that faith and keeping that faith and continuing this Islam, this practice, this religious practice and this religious ideology to their children and future generations? This is a very important question. And I believe that the best place to address these type of topics is in the masjid and in the majalis of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. When you see that the majalis of Imam al-Hussain have youth, when you see mosques or Hussainiyas or organizations that are run by the youth, then you have hope in the future of this place. You have hope in the future that this place is futuristic. This place will have a prosperous future because you're investing in the youth and you're focusing on the future of the community. I've been to many churches. I've been to many mosques as well. I've been to many places of worship. Some places of worship you go and you only see senior citizens. With all respect to senior citizens, they have, mashallah, established and they've kept the faith and they brought the faith and they've done so much. But sometimes you see that the focus is only on them and there's no focus, there's no passing of the baton to future generations. And this is something that is very important. Today, when different ideologies, when individuals that try to bring the fasad and the corruption and try to destabilize the iman and the foundations of a community, who do they target first? Do they target the adults or do they target the younger generation? They target the younger generation. They come and they try to throw their ideologies, their toxic views, toxic ideologies on the young because they know that the adults, they've already solidified their identity. This is why today there's a focus on sexuality in the schools because they know they can't come and change someone who's already mature and already older. But they come at the schools. They come at the younger generation. So this is why we have to be very careful. We have to be very vigilant. We've been speaking about this in the past couple of nights. This is why Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, focus. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, pay particular attention to the youth because deviant behavior could come and change them. It could come and change their identity. Maybe sometimes you go to a university, you think you're going to be learning about science or you're going to be learning about something which is, you're trying to build your future, and you might have a professor that will, within one lecture, turn your child into an atheist. With one lecture, they will be able to convert them and change them from their ways. This is why you have to rush to your children and you have to spend time with the youth and you have to dedicate efforts with the youth before others do. And this is what Imam Sadiq says. He says, بادروا أحداثكم بالحديث قبل أن تسبقكم إليهم المرجئة. Imam Sadiq says, you be the first to start talking to your children, talking to the youth about hadith. He's talking about ideology. He's talking about Islam. He's talking about beliefs. He's talking about ma'rifah. قبل, he says, before أن تسبقكم إليهم المرجئة. At that time, there was a sect, an ideology by the name of Murji'ah. What is Murji'ah? Murji'ah means, and you have them until today with different names. They come and they say, I don't need to pray, I don't need to fast, I don't need to go to Hajj, I don't need to give khums and zakat. I have hope, I have faith, God is going to save me. There are people like that right now, they have that ideology. They say, yeah, you just need to believe and God will save you. Yes, no one's denying that Allah is Arhamur Rahimeen, but Allah also has a way, Allah has a path. You have to do this and you have to do that in order so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with you. So this group, they were rising in number because it's very easy. Today, anyone, you could come and say, yeah, you're all going to go to heaven. Just come and believe in God. And that's it. You don't need to do anything. So Imam al-Sadiq, he says, go and talk to your youth. Badiru. Badiru means you be the first. Badiru ahdathakum bil hadith. Before the murji'ah come and mislead them and bring them away. And my dear brothers and sisters, the age of the youth is an opportunity. It's an opportunity, and as we know, opportunities, they come and they go. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He tells Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, he tells him, Ya Aba Dhar, اغتنم خمسة قبل خمسة. Oh Aba Dhar, take advantage of 5 before 5. Many of you have probably heard this hadith. اغتنم خمسة قبل خمسة. اغتنم حياتك قبل موتك. Your life before your death. واغتنم صحتك قبل سقمك. And your health before your lack of health, before you get sick. وفراغك قبل شغلك. And your free time before you get busy and you get occupied and you don't have anything. وشبابك قبل هرمك. And your youth before you become too old, before you become too frail. The time of your youth is the time that you are physically capable of doing many things that once you get older you will not be able to do. Yes, many of the youth, they think they're invincible. They think that nothing is going to happen. But give it a few years and then you're going to see your back and your leg, and here and there everywhere starts hurting. So وَشَبَابِكَ قَبْلَ هَرَمِكَ وَغِنَاكَ قَبْلَ فَقْرِكَ. And your wealth before your poverty. Of course, wealth is not only through money. Wealth is through the breath that you're breathing. That is also wealth. That is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having family, all of these things around you, these are all wealth. So the Imam alayhi salam or Rasulullah is saying, focus on your youth, because these are opportunities that will go away. Today, unfortunately, you see, just as you see the role of the youth is highlighted, they are those who bring change, but you also see there are some who waste their whole youth. The teenage years, and then the 20s, and then the 30s come, and all of it is wasted. You see some, the whole summer passed and they're playing PlayStation or Xbox. They're wasting it on certain things that will not make them a better person, or wasting it sleeping. Or even some, maybe they're being very productive, but productivity only on this dunya, not focusing on the akhirah. This is a lifestyle that some people have. You tell them, when are you going to start, your salah, go to hajj? When are you going to change, become a better person, closer to God? Say, when I get older, inshallah, I will do that. When I get older, I will do that. This is an ideology that a lot of people have. This is wrong, because we don't know how long we're going to live. There's no guarantee that we're going to live for tomorrow. There's no guarantee that we're going to live another hour, let alone another 20, 30, 40 years. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, he says in a beautiful hadith, talking to the youth, he says, Ya ma'ashir al-shabab, O youth, alaykum bitalab al-akhirah. Seek the akhirah. Because some people, they're so career-oriented, they're so school-oriented. Now it's not a bad thing to be career-oriented. It's not a bad thing to focus on school. But sometimes some people, they're so focused on these things where it makes them forget and totally leave their akhirah. There's no time for religion in their schedule anymore. There's no time for God in their religion anymore. Why? Because I'm working. Working is good. We mentioned working is a form of ibadah. But you need to set boundaries. You need to set time for God. You need to set time for family. You need to set time for work as well. And you need to set time for yourself. So the Imam alayhi salam, he says, work for the akhirah. Let that be a priority for you. Let that be one of your main priorities in life. Ya ma'ashir al-shabab, alaykum bitalab al-akhirah. فوالله رأينا أقواما طلبوا الآخرة فأصابوا الدنيا والآخرة. He says, O youth, work for the akhirah. Because by God, we have seen people that worked for the akhirah and Allah gave them the dunya and the akhirah. But then he says, وَوَاللَّهِ, and by God, we have never seen anyone who worked for this dunya and got the akhirah. If you work for the afterlife, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will automatically give you this dunya. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this dunya and the pleasures of this dunya for the mu'mineen. قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ. Allah says, هِيَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. The pleasures of this dunya have been created for the mu'mineen, for the believers. And the pleasures of the akhirah, of course. So the dunya, this is automatically going to come to you. If God has given you life, if God has given you, for example, to live until you're 80, 90 years old, you think Allah is not going to give you sustenance? They go hand in hand. If you're going to live, that means the rizq is going to come. So focus on the akhirah, focus on the afterlife, and you will get this dunya and the afterlife. But if people only focus on this dunya, then there's no guarantee that they will get the afterlife. Now, how can we change our youth and strengthen our youth and invest in our youth so that they become Hussaini youth, youth on the path of Imam al-Hussain, on the path of Islam, on the path of the Quran? After all, we were talking about the journey to Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. While our friends, our community members, our brothers and sisters are walking, physically walking to Karbala, we are going to try to, although we are not physically in Karbala, we're going to try to change our lives and be on the journey to Imam al-Hussain. And one of the ways of doing so is by focusing on our youth, by investing in our youth. Today, how can we captivate and how can we gravitate and attract youth to Islam and youth to the Quran and to the masjid and to the places of worship? Here, my dear brothers and sisters, we have to do it the way the prophets did it. The prophets, they had their own technique, they had their own way. There's a method, there's a methodology of preaching. Today, different people preach in different ways, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the methodology in the Quran. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. Invite for the sake of your Lord with wisdom and good admonishment. This means that we need to focus on the essence of faith. Today, a lot of Muslims, and Muslims, they come in different colors, different nationalities, different groups of people. You have Muslims from all over the world, many countries. Anyone could be a Muslim. Instead of focusing on being a cultural Muslim, let's be a real Muslim that follows the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Today, some people, they just get so caught up with cultural issues and they start forgetting about the reality of Islam. They start forgetting about the essence of Islam. So we need to bring people to Islam through Islam itself. Yes, cultures are good. Islam does not have a problem with cultures, but sometimes cultures might be at odds with Islam. Sometimes cultures might cause people to look down at other races, look down at other people, and this becomes wrong. This becomes unethical. It goes against the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Focus on the ma'rifah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the best way to do so is to use logic and use reason. Yes, religion is about believing in something that you don't see, believing in the unseen. But the foundations of religion are logical. The foundations of our beliefs are reasonable. Why do you believe in God? Because there has to be a creator. Look at all, you use logical arguments to conclude that there is a God. So use that logic, use that reason. When it comes to anything, when it comes to salah, when it comes to hijab, when it comes to our beliefs, Islam is a very logical religion. Islam is a very reasonable religion. And use that reason. And when you use that, that is called ma'rifah. That is called having ma'rifah, where you don't just practice the prayer, you don't just practice the hijab, you don't just practice the religious teachings, but you have an idea of why you do it, so that no one could come and give you one small talk and change you away from your faith. And this is what the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt insisted on. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, خرج الحسين بن علي على أصحابه. He says Imam al-Hussein came out to his companions and he tells them, أيها الناس, O people, إن الله جل ذكره ما خلق العباد إلا ليعبدوه. He says God did not create the ibad, did not create people, except so that they worship him. إلا ليعبدوه. فإذا عرفوه عبدوه. When they know him, then they will worship him. Today a lot of us, we worship a God that we don't know. فإذا عرفوه عبدوه فإذا عبدوه استغنوا بعبادته عن عبادة ما سواه. And then so God created people to worship God. But to worship God, they have to know God. They have to have ma'rifah. And once they worship God based on ma'rifah, then they were not going to be slaves of anything else in this dunya. And this is the whole message of Imam al-Hussein. Why did Imam al-Hussein rise against Yazid? Because Imam al-Hussein saw that Yazid and his people, they had become slaves of this dunya. Because of their attachment to this dunya, they ended up killing the grandson of the Holy Prophet. Because they were worshiping, they thought they were worshiping God, but in reality they were worshiping their desires. They were worshiping shaitan. They were worshiping themselves. That's why they ended up killing Imam al-Hussein. There's a lot of people, appearance-wise, they are Muslim. Appearance-wise, they say the Shahada. On the day of Ashura, Umar ibn Sa'd, he led his people with prayer, and Imam al-Hussein prayed. But Umar ibn Sa'd was worshiping his desires. Umar ibn Sa'd and those people that killed Imam al-Hussein, they did not know the Lord that they were worshiping. This is why they ended up falling. Because there was no ma'rifah. There was no real conviction in their faith. And this is why, if you want to convince anyone, if you want to gravitate anyone with faith, use reason and use common sense and use logic. That is how you will be able to convince them. And when you start with the youth, this is how you do it. Today there is a lot of parents, they force their kids to pray, for example. Or they force their kids to do certain things. Now, of course, we have some narrations that say once your kids reach an age, they should be forced to pray. Today, some people have the idea, La ikraha fi din, meaning there's no force at all. You can't force anyone to do anything. La ikraha fi din is talking about beliefs. They should not be forced to believe in something. But once they believe, once they identify as Muslim, once they identify with a religion, then that law, the rules of that religion need to be applied. But it needs to be done in a common sense way. It needs to be done in a way where it makes them love this faith, instead of as soon as the parent turns away, they also stop doing what they're supposed to be doing. So now, this is one point, to focus on reason, to focus on logic, and to focus on the essence of faith. This is one issue that a lot of youth deal with. There's another issue where a lot of the youth, the younger generation, and probably everyone living in a non-Islamic society, and they come and they say, I do believe in God. I believe in the Ahlul Bayt. I have faith. However, there's too many temptations around me. There's too many struggles that I'm dealing with. There's no question of my faith, but I'm dealing with struggles. I'm dealing with challenges in life. And we see that a lot of the youth, they are really dealing with challenges. Challenges that the adults don't even, that the elder generation, they don't even think about, because it's something that doesn't even pass by their mind. So here, how do we deal? How do the youth, how should we help the youth deal with these difficult challenges of life? Challenges of drugs, challenges of dating, relationships, challenges of temptations, all of these challenges, normal challenges that everyone deals with on a daily basis. The religion of Islam is a beautiful religion. It's a religion of life. It doesn't tell you go and live in a box and seclude yourself from society and that's it. This is the way you protect yourself. Go live in a bubble. No, you can't do that. You have to be out there in society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to have that rahbaniyah, the living like a monk where you're just secluded from society. No, you have to be an active person in society, but you have to be strong. You have to be able to deal with the temptations. You have to be able to deal with the challenges. And we acquire that strength through the belief in God, through our salah, through our fasting, through these actions that are wajib upon us. That is what empowers us. That is what will help us deal with challenges. So one thing that individuals are required to do, if you find yourself struggling in your faith, if you find yourself struggling with regards to temptations, with regards to doing certain things that might bring you away from God and away from your religion, you have to be very careful with your surroundings. You have to be very careful with the environment that you're in. Who are your friends? The first question that a person must ask themselves if they find themselves living a sinful lifestyle, if they find themselves slowly drifting away from faith, the first question ask yourself is, who are my friends? Who are the people that I associate with? Who has an impact on me? Because your friends, they have a huge impact on you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes a scene on the day of judgment. وَيَوْمَ يَعَضُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ. The day the zalim will bite on their hand. يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ سَبِيلًا. يَا وَيْلَتِي لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أَتَّخِذْ فُلَانًا خَلِيلًا. لَقَدْ أَضَلَّنِي عَنِ الذِّكْرِ بَعْدَ إِذْ جَاءَنِي وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِلْإِنسَانِ خَذُولًا. The zalim will bite on their hand out of regret, and they will say, only if I did not follow the way of the Prophet. Ya waylati, woe be upon me. Only if I did not follow this fulan, this person as a khalil. Only if I did not have this person as a friend. Sometimes we're in toxic environments. We're in a toxic place. If you go and you put yourself in a toxic environment, slowly it's going to touch you. Slowly it's going to get all over you. Slowly it's going to impact you. Whether it's bacteria, whether it's something poisonous, and whether it is immorality. Today some people, they come and they say, no, I'm a Muslim, I'm a believer, I'm not going to be influenced, I'm not going to be impacted. It's okay if I have bad friends. No, who said it's okay? You have to be very careful. This is why there are certain rulings in Islam. For example, it is haram, it is forbidden to sit on a table or in a group of people where someone is drinking alcohol. Now someone might say, I'm not drinking. I have nothing to do with it. The person on the other side of the table is drinking. What does that have to do with me? Here, it's haram. Because we are impacted by those who we surround ourselves with. And even if we're not impacted, if someone is passing by and they see me with this bad group of friends, they see me with a group of people that are far from God, a group of people that are drinking, a group of people that are doing immoral behavior, what are they going to say when they look at me? They're going to say, he's one of them. They're going to say, that's all one group. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the mu'min to be honored. Allah wants the mu'min to be respected in the eyes of others. Karama, the mu'min has karama. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Allah does not want you to be in an environment, to be in a surrounding where there is any immorality, there's any ideological deviance, any of that behavior, anything that will bring you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one. Second, when it comes to temptations, when it comes to desires, when it comes to these needs that bring people away from God and make people fall in the sin, One way to deal with it is to protect yourself, of course, stay away from it. But another way is to go head on and deal with it and try to satisfy that need in the halal. Many of the needs that we have, you could either have haram money or you could have halal money. You could either have a haram burger or you could have a halal burger. You could either spend time with bad friends or with good friends. So whatever it is, do it in the halal. One of the needs that a lot of people have is the need to satisfy the temptations and the physical desire. There's a solution for that. Our societies and our communities have just made it difficult. We've made marriage something that seems almost impossible. Where when they tell some of the youth, why don't you get married? They come and they say, I have to get my degree, I have to get my job, I have to buy the house, I have to buy the car, I have to do this and that. And the sisters as well, they have a whole list of things that need to take place in order for them to have a happy marriage and live happily ever after. We've made it complicated. We've made it difficult. And when we delay marriage, when we delay the halal, what ends up happening? We fall in the haram. We end up falling in the haram. There are halal solutions to many of the problems and challenges that we are dealing with on a daily basis. Another solution, my dear brothers and sisters, one of the reasons why many people, especially many of the youth, fall in the haram and fall in the temptations is because too much time. When you have too much time on your hand, you have a couple hours, you're not doing anything, that's when shaitan comes. That's the time that shaitan will come because he sees that you're not busy, and he'll come and he'll try to infiltrate and he will try to distract you and bring you away from your values and your faith. So try to use your time. Try to occupy your time. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, whenever he would see any of the youth, he would make sure that they're not sitting and they don't have extra time on their hands. Some people, they're just sitting around. They have extra time. They're not doing anything. The human being, you're all energy. This is all energy. If you don't use it productively, if you don't do anything good with it, it's going to be gone. Our days are numbered. We're not going to be living infinite number of days. Our days are numbered, and we're spending 30%, 40% of our life doing nothing. Half of it we're sleeping, and then whatever's left of it we're working and we're trying to bring ends meet, and the other half we're just sitting around. So a huge percentage of our life, if you calculate it, it's probably going to be years where we're just sitting around. Be productive. Try to do something. A lot of us, a lot of the youth especially, you have gifts that you don't even know about yet. Have you discovered your talents? Have you discovered all of the talents that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you? Maybe you're a good swimmer, for example. Maybe you're a good writer. Maybe you're a good orator. Have you tried? You don't know. So try to discover your talents. Try to use the talents that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. And this is one of the best ways of reaching the satisfaction of Allah and becoming a productive person that is giving back to society and community. Someone who uses their time wisely. Another very important way of protecting ourselves from the temptations, especially for the youth, and this applies to everyone, to all of us, and that is to try to gain spiritual fulfillment. A lot of us, you find a lot of people, especially in societies where people are living affluent lives, where people are comfortable, people are wealthy, everyone, alhamdulillah, has food to eat, everyone has a house, everyone has cars, everyone has all these things. You find that in these societies, there's a lot of spiritual void. And this is when people come to realize that it wasn't the money that brings the happiness. It wasn't the wealth. It wasn't the material goods that bring real happiness. Real happiness is attained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why we say, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. The qalb, why is it called qalb? Because it keeps flipping. This is why revolution, they call it inqilab. Why? Because you're flipping. You're changing. So the qalb, it's constantly changing. It's constantly changing. Sometimes you have that urgency, that you feel that you are connected with God. Sometimes you don't. But you have to try to keep yourself on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best way to do so is through spirituality, through dua, through munajat, through salat al-layl, through the 5 daily prayers, the wajib prayers, the taqibat after the salah. These are all small ways that will help you become more spiritual, that will help bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Istighfar. Something that we should make it a habit, every single one of us, to always do istighfar. Maybe 100 times a day, maybe 500 times a day, whatever it is. We all have time to do istighfar. You're driving, you're walking, you're going around, whatever it is, take that opportunity to do istighfar. And it comes with so many blessings. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, he talks about some of the blessings of istighfar. فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. He will forgive you of your sins. That's not enough. يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. Allah subhanahu, do istighfar, repent to God. إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا. He will bring down good rain. يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ. And He will increase your wealth, and He will increase your children. وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. And He will also give you jannat and rivers in the heavens. Do istighfar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the istighfar, especially from the youth, especially from those who are young. In fact, there's a hadith that says the most beloved sight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is when a youth is doing istighfar and turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a youth decides on getting up in the middle of the night and praying salat al-layl. When a youth decides on getting up and reciting the Quran. This is the thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the most in a person. And Allah will accept your istighfar. Allah will forgive. Do not ever give up hope in the mercy of Allah. وَلَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Allah forgives all of the sins. In fact, the greatest of the sins is to give up in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Give up hope in the mercy of Allah. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. 2 stories from Imam Zayn al-Abidin. One in Al-Kafi. Al-Kafi by Al-Kulayni. He mentions a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. From Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says that there was a family. This is pre-Islamic times. The Imam is probably talking about during the time of Bani Israel or something. He's saying there was a family, they were on a ship. They were traveling the seas. And there was a shipwreck. And everyone in the family drowned. Except the mother, a young lady. She held on to a piece of wood. And this brought her to an island. She came to an island, she came to a land, and she comes to the land from the ocean, she drifts to the beach, and the Imam says, on that land, there was a young man who used to commit all of the sins. All of the sins he used to commit. This young man is walking on the beach and he sees this lady. So he goes to her, and he sees she's alone, she has no one. He tries to physically assault her. He tries to sexually assault her. And he comes to her. When he is about to commit the haram, she begins to cry. So he tells her, why are you crying? She tells him, I'm crying because Allah is watching. I'm crying because of Allah. So he says to her, if you're crying, I should be crying. And just by saying that, he realizes that he needs to do the tawbah. He brought himself to the conclusion that he needs to do the tawbah. He says, you're not doing anything wrong. I am the one who's doing the wrong. So he decides to not do anything. And he decides to go to his family. So he begins to walk and he does tawbah. He repents. He does not do the haram and he starts walking back to his family. The Imam says as he's walking, he sees a priest, he sees a monk, a worshipper, and they're both walking together and the sun rises. So when the sun rises, the priest, the preacher, or the monk, he tells him the sun is bothering us, and they're walking together. He tells him, let's do dua. Let's ask Allah to send a cloud so that we will be under the shade and we will be protected by the cloud. The young man who was just about to commit the sin and he left the sin, he says, who am I? I'm embarrassed to ask Allah to send a cloud to protect me from the sun. So who am I to do such a dua? So the monk says, okay, I will ask Allah and you say Ameen. So the monk, he raised his hand and he said, oh Allah, send a cloud that will protect us from the sun. And this young man, he said Ameen. Suddenly a cloud comes over them. And they're walking, and there's a cloud that is moving with them while they're walking. Then they reach a fork, they reach a place where the monk has to go one direction and this man has to go another direction. They separate from one another and the cloud continues to follow the young man instead of the monk. The monk, he looks, he was expecting the cloud to follow him, but he sees it went the other way. So he runs back to the man. He tells him, wait, you said you're a sinner. What has happened? So he tells him his story. He tells him, I was about to fall in the haram and I decided not to. And I said, astaghfirullah, I decided not to. The monk tells him, Allah has forgiven you and Allah has accepted your repentance and your tawbah and continue the way that you are. This is a beautiful story by Imam Zain al-Abidin in Al-Kafi. Another story from Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam is that one day he saw a man holding on to the Kaaba. He's holding on to the Kaaba and he says, oh Allah, forgive me, for I know you will never forgive me. The Imam tells him, Wayhak, how can you say such a thing? This is the biggest sin, to say Allah will not forgive me. The man says, I have committed a great sin. What is it that you committed? He said, I was from those who participated in the murder of your father, Abu Abdullah. The Imam alayhi salam, he tells him, you, and even though that is very difficult for the Imam to say, he tells him the fact that you have given up hope in the mercy of Allah, that is a greater sin than even the murder of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. Now, of course, we know that anyone who actually went forward and killed Imam al-Hussain, they do not have the tawfiq of doing tawbah. They do not have the tawfiq of repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But anyways, Imam Zain al-Abidin was trying to show that there is always a path towards repentance. My dear brothers and sisters, this is why we have to focus on the majalis of Imam al-Hussain, because this is where we are gravitated back to Islam. This is where we are gravitated back to our roots and the teachings of our faith and our practices. My dear brothers and sisters, the 17th of Safar, according to some narrations, is the Shahada of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam, the 8th Imam of Ahl al-Bayt. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, he lived in Tus. He was forced to migrate to Tus, current day Mashhad, and there he was poisoned. But the Imam alayhi salam, when he was living there, Al-Ma'mun, he would bring the poets to come and recite poetry in favor of the Imam, because the Imam was the crown prince. Now deep inside, Al-Ma'mun had hatred for the Imam, but publicly and apparently he would show that he is loving the Imam. Different poets, they would come and they would praise the Imam. One of them, Da'bil ibn Ali al-Khuza'i. Da'bil ibn Ali al-Khuza'i, this man, he was on the run from the government for 40 years. 40 years he was on the run from the government. Why? Because he would walk around saying the praise of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And this got him in trouble with the authorities. But he comes to Imam al-Rida alayhi salam and he recites his famous words of poetry for Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. In that, he gives condolences to Fatima al-Zahra, to the Ahl al-Bayt, not only for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, but for all of the martyrs of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. So he begins, أَفَاطِمُ لَوْ خِلْتِ الْحُسَيْنَ مُجَدَّلًا وَقَدْ مَاتَ عَطْشَانًا بِشَطِّ فُرَاتِ. O Fatima, if you were to see Hussein on the ground, laying on the ground when he was killed thirsty near the Euphrates, in the Furat, he was killed thirsty. إِذَا لَلَطَمْتِ الْخَدَّ فَاطِمُ عِنْدَهُ. You would slap your face, O Fatima, when you see this. وَأَجْرَيْتِ دَمْعَ الْعَيْنِ فِي الْوَجَنَاتِ. And your tears would shed. أَفَاطِمُ قُومِي يَبْنَةَ الْخَيْرِ وَانْدُبِي نجوم سماوات بأرض فلاتي. Oh Fatima, get up and mourn. Mourn these stars of the heavens that fell in the land of Karbala. And then he begins to talk about the shuhada of the Ahl al-Bayt. قبور بكوفان وأخرى بطيبة. You have some graves in Kufa, in Najaf. You have some graves in Taybah, in Medina. وأخرى بفخ نالها صلواتي. And some in Fakh, where there was a battle and the progeny of Rasulullah were killed there. وأخرى بأرض الجوزجان محلها وقبر ببا خمرة لدى الغربات. Then he talks about Yahya ibn Zayd, and he talks about several of the children and descendants of Imam al-Hasan. And then he says, وَقَبْرٌ بِبَغْدَادٍ لِنَفْسٍ زَكِيَّةٍ تَضَمَّنَهَا الرَّحْمَنِ فِي الْغُرُفَاتِ. And then there's a grave in Baghdad, referring to the grave of Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam, the father of Imam al-Rida. So Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, he tells Da'bil, oh Da'bil, do you allow me to add a line to your poem? Do you allow me to add some words of poetry? Da'bil tells him, yes, please add, it would be my honor. So then Imam al-Rida, he says, وَقَبْرٌ بِطُوسٍ يَا لَهَا مِن مُصِيبَةٍ ألحت على الأحشاء بالزفرات. And there's a grave in Tus, and that is such a calamity which breaks the hearts. Da'bil, he does not know a grave of any of the Ahl al-Bayt in Tus. So he tells him, which grave is this that you have in Tus? Imam al-Rida, he points to himself. He says, Ali ibn Musa arshad Allah amrahu وصلى عليه أفضل الصلوات. Imam al-Rida, he was poisoned in Khurasan. And then Imam al-Jawad, he washed the body of his father. And Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, there was a huge funeral procession. All of the people of Mashhad, all of the people of Khurasan, they came out to mourn the loss of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam. But there was one shaheed from the Ahl al-Bayt whose body was left on the land for 3 days. And that is the body of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain, who was buried without ghusl, without kafan. When a person passes away, their body is respected, their body is honored. But Imam al-Hussein, the first thing they did after killing him, Umar ibn Sa'd called for 10 horsemen. He tells them, Ya khayl Allah irkabi wa radhi sadr al-Hussein. Oh horses of God, come and ride and stomp the chest of Aba Abdullah. They crushed the body of Imam al-Hussein, leveling it with the ground. This is why when Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein 3 days later, he comes to Karbala to bury the body of his father Imam al-Hussein, and the martyrs, He tells Bani Asad, he tells them, dig one large grave here. And then he dug a grave for his father, Imam al-Hussein. Then he tries to carry the body of Aba Abdullah. But he sees that he cannot carry the body of his father, Imam al-Hussein. The body has been so mutilated. So he gathers a straw, he gets a straw mat, a hasira, and he places the body parts of Imam al-Hussein in the straw mat. Then he carries that headless, mutilated body and he places it in the grave. Then when he places Imam al-Hussein, the body in the grave, he puts his cheek on the neck of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and he kisses the neck of Aba Abdullah. Then he pours the soil on the grave of Aba Abdullah. And then he begins to say, طوبى لأرض تضمنت جسدك الطاهر. Glory, Tuba, for the soil, the land that has your sacred body. فإن الدنيا بعدك مظلمة والآخرة بنورك مشرقة. As for this dunya, it is dark after you, and the akhirah is bright and illuminated with you. أما الليل فمسهد والحزن سرمد أو يختار الله لأهل بيتك دارك التي أنت بها مقيم. As for my nights, they are sleepless and restless until Allah takes me and I see you, O Father Hussein. Then he writes with his finger on the grave of Imam al-Hussein. He writes, هذا قبر الحسين ابن علي ابن أبي طالب الذي قتلوه عطشانا غريبا. This is the grave of Hussein, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was killed thirsty and lonely. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. يا الله يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات، إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك غافر الخطيئات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلوات. صل على محمد يا حسين.
I long for Bainul Harmain. My heart is with Abbas and Hussein. Karbala, Karbala, Allahumma arzuqna Karbala, Karbala. Humma arzuqna Karbala. My journey from here starts between the moon and the stars. 'Tis that I cry on my cheeks, crying for your dome it seeks. My master, come see these tears, come and save me from my fears. Karbala, Karbala, Zukna Karbala, Karbala. I hear Zainab crying out, "Oh Zohar, I am alone. No Abbas and no Hussein. Visitors, you ease my pain. March on towards Karbala. I also visit from Sham. Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala. As I walk, this mother cries, in Karbala my son lies. Oh lovers, I am Zahra. I also come from afar. My tears will flow from Baki to Furat. Oh, can't you see? Karbala, Karbala. Allah. Arzuqna Karbala. From Baki another wails, severed his arms on that day. I raised my son for Ashura. He was the prayer of Zahra. My name is al-Banin. My love no limit has seen. Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala. Tears of blood from above the rain, crying for Mawla Hussain. Tears of blood from above the rain, crying for Mawla Hussain. From above the 12th one's cheek, to avenge Asghar he seeks. My Iman for you we weep, our yearning for you runs deep. Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala. Love and tears are my fuel, marching with them towards you. But a drop in the million sea, oh Hussein, acknowledge me. I've walked on Karbala's floor to throw myself at your door. Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala, Karbala. Allahumma arzuqna Karbala.
Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين وسيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم منا سلام الله أبدا ما بقينا وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منا لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبو الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين وأختيك زينب وأم كلثوم بنتك سكينة. السلام عليكم يا شهداء كربلاء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على التسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين: علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباقر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي التقي الجواد، وعلي بن محمد النقي الهادي، وحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على